Okay, we're going to go ahead and have our hello. Oh, no, let's turn this on. Okay, we're going to go. Hello? Are we on? Hello? Hello, hello. Okay, we're going to have our 60-second warning. This is our 60 seconds before class starts. Hey, Sammy, can you get my microphone on?
You know, brother.
Hello, testing. Okay, we're on. Okay, so in case you missed that, about 15 seconds ago we had our 60-second warning, so we're going to go down to 45 seconds. I know I don't want to start early so we can end early. I just know that you're all so anxious about being in Bible class that you just can't hold it in any longer. I don't want to riot, pitchforks, torches, none of that. Play a song or sing a song? Oh, why don't you want me to sing a song, John? I can do that. Huh? Oh, save my voice. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Okay, so we are going to get into Exodus chapter 3 because I do want to talk about the burning bush, the implications of that, the response of Moses as he sees the burning bush that's not consumed, why there was a burning bush, and why he did what he did, and then some of the things that came out of that. But before we get into that, just real quickly, I want to use this as an opportunity for us to kind of share with each other, because I kind of get the sense that it's easy to become very negative and to be very frustrated and to get kind of fired up about stuff. And so I want to take just a moment. How have you been successful in building a flare stack that allows you to vent up to God and not turn into the person that people want to avoid on the phone or in the copy room? What are some ways that you feel that you've been effectively able to kind of vent some of that stuff up to God? What does that look like? Yes.
I write it to God.
Okay. You like to write?
I write it, yeah.
Okay, so you have a journal?
No, I throw it away. I don't want you to read it.
Oh, okay. So this is not like a leather-bound journal that you're writing and then chunking it. Okay. Great. Okay, so writing is one way that you can flare up to God. What's another suggestion that you have, something that you found is helpful for you?
Hey, Doug.
Yes, Dwight?
Well, since me and Jeff work together, we bounce a lot of stuff off our talk and both vent.
Okay.
And I think that helps me and him both.
Okay, so having someone that you can share some of your frustrations with, but you're sharing it with, this is not this is how God is I'm gonna give this up to God. So finding some way, finding someone that you can talk to, that you can say, okay, here's a way, here's some struggles that I'm bringing to the Lord, and I'm trusting that He's gonna to take care of this, or if He doesn't get me out of the situation, He can help me as I'm in that situation. Okay, what else?
Sometimes getting totally off by yourself and just screaming out what's been bothering you.
Okay, so like getting away, getting out, and I don't know if that's something that we're kind of allowed to do or not. Maybe now is the best time to do it because we can go places where they're less packed, but finding a place and just really just letting out your struggles and your frustrations. I think you even went so far to say is like screaming out, like I'm really struggling.
Sometimes you feel like it's so balled inside.
Yeah.
You just need to get it out.
Okay.
Sometimes just screaming out the top of
Yes.
your lungs
It's just
beginning.
yeah. And while we understand that God can hear our whispers just as well as our screams, sometimes physically it seems to help to just get out there. And again, throughout Scripture, we have good, godly, faithful people, including Jesus Himself, who cries out to God. Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And so we need to be careful to say, well, we really shouldn't scream or yell because that's offensive to God and that's disrespectful. Jesus Himself on the cross cried out to God, why have you forsaken me? What else? What are other ways? Are there any other ways that you found helpful as you build your flare stack so that you can send it up to God rather than walking around muttering, frustrated?
Well, I sure search for verses in the Bible.
Okay, spending time in Scripture. Okay, reading different verses in the Bible. Something that we used to do when I was a little kid. It was just a big thing growing up. In Bible classes, you memorize verses. I mean, if there was a list in the Bible, there's an expectation that if it was the 12 apostles or the 10 commandments or the 10 plagues or whatever, you memorized it. Just so pleased that I'm a part of a church body, a faith community that still believes that that's important. My daughter Gracie, she's 8 years old. She has a Bible memory verse. It just was really special and touching to Jennifer and I. We walked into Gracie's room and she has one of those little stand-up mirrors that she can look at to get ready in the morning. Not that she really does anything to get ready other than throw some clothes on that rarely match. But she wrote in marker her Bible verse for the week. And so I don't get to do this because I'm already out of the room. But this morning, Jennifer, as she was getting Gracie ready, she said, do we need to go over your memory verse? Nope, I got it. I've been reading it every day. And so we're real proud of her for that. Finding different verses. Listen, if you're really struggling, don't be ashamed and think, man, God doesn't want me to feel this way. You can find examples in the Bible, whether it's Job, whether it's David, whether it's Paul, who really talk to God in a very candid way and say, here's my frustrations and my struggles. And so looking to scriptures can offer comfort. John, you mentioned something as well?
I've eliminated all the news from my life.
Okay, so you and I are the same. You've eliminated news from your life. And I mean, I know that there's some people who look at me or maybe us and say, oh, you just got your head in the sand. I think that we have enough problems of our own, and we don't need to borrow the clouds of tomorrow to cover up the sunshine of today. And so for me personally, I think, to me, I'm just a little more sensitive to that type of stuff maybe than some of you are, and it bothers me a lot. And so I've decided that I can't do that. And so John, you do the same thing. I don't have local TV, and I don't read the newspaper very often. I check the obituaries every once in a while, but now I've decided I think I'm going to stop doing that. A few days ago, I checked the obituaries. There were 5 of them. 3 of them were younger than me. And so I was like, man, I'm getting old and this is tough times. But, there are plenty of ways that we can be informed and we can pray for people without just allowing ourselves to be constantly inundated with that negativity, which seems to be coming out from everywhere. So, again, Jesus is going to talk about you keep putting that stuff in, and that's what's going to be that comes out. Okay, so anything else? Does anybody else have a smokestack suggestion for their life? Yes.
My mom bought me for Christmas, and I've started doing it. It's a gratitude journal.
Okay.
And so, at the end of the day, when I'm just, I'm praying to God and I'm feeling so discouraged, before I go to sleep every night, I make myself write down at least one thing that brought me joy, that made me laugh, that made me think about God, that made me, just something that it's making me realize that no matter how bad the day seems, there's one thing that sparked a smile, that sparked joy. And so for me, that's kind of my, okay, God, I see it. I'm not alone, I'm not abandoned, it's not totally dark. There's still a light there. So I've been trying to do that this year, and I've found it's really made a difference in my outlook.
Good. And I like the fact that you talked about that you're ending your day with something like that. And a lot of times you're going to begin your day you're going to pick up where you left off last time. And so to look back, and you can do it both ways, either starting off your morning and say, here's the things I'm thankful for. But at the end of a day, especially some of the days that we've had, when you're raising 2 little girls at home and you're also their teacher, and you're their chef, and their principal. It's sometimes nice at the end of the day to sit down and kind of think, okay, here's some things that I can be grateful for. And there's a lot of different creative ways you can do that. You can get a gratitude journal if you want to do that. You can. I know I've seen some people who use the alphabet, and they try to go through and they find something that they're thankful for with starting every different letter of the alphabet. You do that for very long, and you're going to be super thankful for X-rays. And xylophones, because there's not a whole lot of X's that you can use, or you can be thankful for your X, I suppose. But there's not too many ones for that. But that's a different way you can do it. I guess it's been over a year ago, but on one of our Sunday night classes we had, our small groups. Our small group, we decided to take just the tiniest little Post-it notes, and we wrote things or people that we were thankful for. And I suppose there were about 10 of us in that room, and we took them and everybody wrote down different things, and then we stuck them on one of the doors. And I don't care if it rubs the finish off. I do not want to take those things off. Like I walk in there probably once a week, and I'll just look at all those, and I recognize some of the people's handwriting. And there was only 10 of us, but there had to be probably 120, 150 different little Post-it notes. And I look up there, and I see my kids' names on it, and I see names of different people here and things that people are thankful for. Maybe if you want to get creative, get a little stack of sticky notes, and every morning write one thing you're thankful for, and at night put it up there, and see how many you can cover, how long it takes to cover a door or a mirror or a wall or a house or a pet. Just find ways. Just say, this is going to be my area. This is my thankful area. And I want to encourage you to consider that. And I think that'll be helpful. There are a lot of different ways, and we won't talk any more about this, but find your smoke or your flare stack. Ways that you can give it up to God. You can be thankful. And if you have a frustration that you want to take to God, don't be afraid to do that. Lift it up to God. There's no one better who can handle that than God. And so we can go to neighbors or different people, and we can complain, or we can go to social media and really have at it. But I want to encourage you to let those flare stacks go up to God. Because as we close out 25, chapter 2 says, so God looked on the Israelites and he was concerned about them. And I don't think we can really talk too much about a God who's concerned about his people and their circumstances. In a world filled with nearly 8 billion people, we have a God who hears your prayers. He knows your heart. He knows the hairs on your head, and he is concerned about you. And so I want you to think about that. So now we're going to join in chapter 3, verse 1. We know that a lot of time has transpired between 2 and 3, because we know Moses went into the desert at 40. We know he's going to go back into Egypt at how old? 80 years old. So we know that he has a wife and a child now. And so we're going to pick up in 3, and we're now just days away from Moses re-entering into Egypt. So decades have passed in this time. And again, I mean, was Moses content to live the rest of his life in that desert? I would absolutely say yes. I think, and this is, I'm not trying to be critical of Moses, but I think in some ways he probably traded in his passion and his zeal of his first 40 years to maybe a little bit more apathetic, more, he is just resigned to where he is. And things are still really bad with his home people, but he seems like he's convinced that somebody else needs to handle that. And the young Moses that went in and said, you will not mistreat my people, and he took the life of someone, now is like, I'm not going back there. And we're going to hear some of that. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. So what does that mean? What do we automatically know about him now? What's he doing? He's a shepherd. Okay, I want you to allow that to sink in. He's a shepherd in Midian, and God is going to call a shepherd to reach out to a people who are really have been oppressed. That's a theme we're going to see played out several times. But when we talk about Jesus as the good shepherd, he's the one who's going to be called out. Okay, so Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And so let's stop right there. Well, I'll go ahead and read this. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So my first question is, why a burning bush? I mean, God could have come to him in any number of different ways. Later on, he'll use donkeys that talk. He uses light coming down from heaven. He uses a whale to swallow up and then spit out one of his prophets. Why the burning bush? Is there any significance in your mind as to why that God would come in that way?
A burning bush has flame,
Okay.
which is also light.
Okay. So there's fire, water. Typically, what did that mean for the people, for the Jews at that time, or for people of all time? What did water mean?
Water would mean life.
Water, actually, for them, we would think water is meaning life. For them, water meant death. Okay, and still, symbolically, it still represents that, because baptism is what? It's death first. It's burial. For them, water almost always was something that signified death, because the waters, I mean, we have globes and we have maps, and we have instruments that can measure how wide and how deep a body of water is. I mean, you think about if you lived near a body of water back then, even there are some big lakes that you can't see to the other side of the shore, and those can seem kind of daunting and overwhelming. It's where lots and lots of people died mysteriously. I mean, their whole world, if it was water, it was the Bermuda Triangle. There was this fear of death. And we don't have to go back very far, a few decades. How were the baby boys killed at that time? They were thrown into the water. And so while water, we know, represents life, to them, in a lot of ways, it was a place where people disappeared. It's where people died. And fire was very important, because fire represented life. It was something that provided light. We don't use fire in the way that people did back then. Some of us occasionally will light a fire in our chimney because we like the smell, we like the sound. It'll provide some warmth, but by and large, if we're cold, we're going to go get a thick coat, or we're going to click a button on a little plastic panel, and magic hot air is going to come out in all of our rooms, right? And so, but for them, fire meant several things. It meant warmth. It meant light. It provided sustenance in the fact that you would use that fire to cook your food with. They didn't have electric griddles or even gas stoves like we have now. And so fire was so very important. So I think there is some great symbolism to the fact that God chose fire to represent himself and to get the attention of Moses. So now we have part 2 is he noticed that there was a bush was on fire, but what? It wasn't being consumed. So I want to talk about his vantage point in just a second, but why do you think God chose to have a bush that was burning but not burning up? Think about this. What could be the symbolism here?
Eternal life.
Eternal life? Okay, that God was a burning, consuming fire, but yet he was not consumed by what was going on in Egypt. He wasn't allowing his own people to be consumed. That maybe God represented the fire and the Israelites represented this bush, in that he was completely surrounding them, but he wasn't consuming them. And fire is going to play a very important role in the coming chapters, because God is going to continue to use fire as a way to lead and guide his people. It's going to be a symbol of, I am here, I have come down. So another thing I want us to think about is, Moses sees the fire and he sees that it hasn't been consumed. So what does that tell us here? What can we imagine? If we're Moses, we see a fire, okay, and we see that it's not being consumed. What does that mean for Moses? It means that he had to have spent a little bit of time staring at this bush that's on fire. So he's contemplating this. He sees the bush. We don't know how often he's in this area, and we'll talk in later chapters about the significance of this particular mountain. I think you're really going to like it. I think most of you probably already know about it. But here he is. He sees this, and he's staring at it. He looks over there, and then we have Moses' thoughts being written out. So he doesn't say this out loud, but he thinks, I will go over and see this strange sight and why the bush does not burn. Now verse 4 is going to say, when the Lord saw he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. Okay, so who is in the bush? This is God himself. God has chosen to come down. Is that always how God communicates? No. What are some other? How are some other ways that God communicates?
Through angels.
Through angels. We have various angels that come. And again, I've said this a million times. I'll say it one more time. Be very careful about asking God to send one of his angels, because while cherished moments, what made a cute, chubby little angel in the form of figurines that some of you may collect from the 80s and 90s in that time, the sense that we get, the response of people who meet angels is never, how cute. It's often filled with great fear. But in this particular instance, God doesn't send an angel. God himself comes. And this is really important. And this, I believe, is really one of the main things, one of the main themes of Exodus. God coming down. Again, why is this so important? Well, we've gone over it several times, but Joseph and his family coming to the end of Genesis, the beginning of Exodus, is 430 years. And Exodus is going to open up, and Moses is going to be born, and the people, Moses is going to be born in a time where babies are being killed. And there are 40 years between Moses being born and Moses murdering. He's going to go out in the desert, and at the end of his stay in the desert is going to be right here in chapter 3. And it's going to be how long that he's been in the desert? 40 years. So we're talking about from when Joseph's family, his brothers, showed up until the burning bush is over 500 years. And he's here, so now's the perfect time to ask, Lynn, what was life like in the 16th century? Tell me about the 1500s. Why, think about how long of a period that was between God is going to work powerfully through this man named Joseph, and he's going to interpret dreams. And through Joseph, God is going to save hundreds of thousands of people, including a family that's going to go on and be a part of ultimately the Abrahamic promise that God's people is going to grow and Abraham's seed is going to bless all the world ultimately through Jesus. 500 long years. Now, for those of you who have read through the Old Testament, real quickly, just as fast as you can, not in any order, I just want you to start yelling out miracles that happen in the Old Testament. Everybody go. Come on, everybody, tell me miracles in the Old Testament. Elijah, Elisha. What's interesting about the Old Testament is there really aren't very many miracles. Or there are not very many times in which miracles are done. We get a lot of miracles, okay, and then we have a lot of time of no miracles. So we have Moses, and there's a lot of miracles that are going to take place from the burning bush to a staff that's going to turn into a snake, water or wine. We're going to have all these plagues. There's going to be the crossing of the Red Sea. There's going to be the manna that comes down from heaven, the cloud of fire, or the pillar. I said the cloud of fire. The pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud that's going to guide them. And then they're going to get in. There's going to be Jericho falling. And then that's going to bookend a large portion of the miracles. Now, again, we're talking about, the Old Testament covers thousands of years. And we have this period of really, 40 or 50 years really in which we have a lot of miracles. We have, as they're wandering through the desert, and then it's going to get really silent. Now we're going to get some with Elijah and Elisha. There's going to be the feeding of ravens. There's going to be fire coming down from heaven on the altar. We're going to have some of those. But really, the miracles that take place in the Old Testament come in very concentrated chunks. Okay, and so this is really interesting because we haven't had a whole lot of miracles. I mean, if you want to argue, I guess you certainly could argue that the Tower of Babel was a miracle. But and of course we had the flood, but they come in chunks. And so for 500 years there's been a lot of nothing. Now, even in 2021, when things aren't as good as they were, in my opinion, than they were 20 years ago, spiritually speaking, just kind of the angst that people have. But even at that, we're living in a really good time. And it is not hard. It is really not that hard for us to sit here and list all the ways that God is working in our lives. Okay. Just so many things that I think we take for granted. Last night, every Saturday night, I get ready. I set out my stuff to get ready for what I'm going to wear. Okay, and I go into my closet, and I don't feel like I have a whole lot of stuff, but I have probably 2 or 3 at least different pairs of dress shoes that I can pick, like the shoes I only wear on Sunday mornings, right? And that's surrounded by probably 6 or 7 other pairs of tennis shoes and boots and things like that. I go to grab a shirt off, and I'm really weird. I will wear a shirt and then wash it, and then I make sure when I'm done wearing it, I hang it up on the very right side of my I have hangers. And so I know that as I wear shirts, like the further it goes left, the longer it's been since I've worn it. And so I pulled this shirt up, and I want you to know that there had to be at least a dozen shirts, if not more, to the right of this one. That's a lot of clothes. Like, I turn on lights. I turn on sinks. Like, I don't even turn on lights. I have a little thing that says, Alexa, turn the light on for me. Like, I get in a car that has combustion and I can go hundreds of miles. 2 weeks ago, I got to go visit some ministers in a different county. Is this legal? Can I talk about this? There were only 5 of us, I think, so we were okay. Right? And so we went there. Like years ago, that couldn't have happened. But I was able to get in a car, and I don't want to say magically, but like I got to go see people, and we got to sing songs and pray for one another, and we did a Bible study, and then we ate together. It was something that was really special. I completely take that for granted. Okay? That's like my whole life has been like that. Like I use something, and then when I'm done with it, I throw it away. And I don't even think twice about it because I know I have more of whatever it is that I just threw away. Paper plate. I mean, I'm just saying, compare that to a people who are enslaved. Okay? They don't have multiple shoes and boots and dress shoes that they wear. They have the sandals that are probably wore out, and they're probably the 4th or 5th person to wear those sandals. Okay? They don't have the indoor plumbing or lighting or freedoms. You know, we talk about we live in such an amazing country. The freedoms that we have, and I know it gets intertwined because everybody else gets their freedoms and they sometimes clash. But folks, like we have, I just don't want us to forget, we have the Bible. Like they didn't have one. There wasn't hundreds of Bibles around. There were only a few. And you probably couldn't read one because you probably were illiterate. And it would have been a lot harder for them to wake up and say, let me rattle off 10 reasons why I want to give thanks to God today. I have a job. No, they don't have a job. I have a boss. No, I have a guy that will literally beat me with a whip if I don't meet the quota that he's magically set out for me. And later on, that quota is going to get a whole lot harder, not higher, but the ways in which they have to now gather their own straw. It's really terrible. I'm thankful for my kids. Oh, wait, the government took my baby boy and drowned him in a river. I mean, these are terrible, terrible times. And so chapter 3 of Exodus is really, really important because it ends chapter 2 with God is concerned for his people. And in chapter 3, God shows up. And for a people who are weeping over their children that had died, for the slavery, for their aching backs, and when you got an injury, it wasn't a doctor and a pill that you took. You suffered through it, or it got bad. You had an illness, and a lot of times you had that illness until it killed you. It was a different time. And so they didn't say, oh, well, insurance will cover me, or I'll go see my doctor, or I'll rest for a few days. There was so little relief. And so when God showed up, it was such a big deal. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to regret it. And I'm going to get a lot of people who are probably going to be really mad when I say this. But I pray that we get to a place in our lives that God showing up is a really big deal. Because right now, I am burdened with the fact that I just don't need God. I have TV, and I have my social group, my social life. I've got music that I can listen to. I have any number of ways to entertain myself. I am not hungry. I'm not hungry. I don't know what hunger is. At 11:50, I think I'm hungry because it's been 3 or 4 hours since I've eaten. Like, I just pray. And I'm not convinced that a terrible government and dissatisfaction with society is going to be the worst thing that happens to my kids. I'm almost convinced that the upbringing that I've had, which has been amazing, has made it a lot harder to see the burning bush. Moses stopped and he looked at the burning bush, and what we get from that bush that's being consumed but not burning up is God says, I'm here. I've heard the cries of my people. And he says this. He says, do not come any... Well, first he says, the Lord saw that he'd gone over to look. God called out to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses says, here I am. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, and I apologize. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking we're going to spend the next 8 years in Exodus because we're just a few verses in, but I just love the response of Moses. What are you going to say if you see a burning bush and your name is called out? Judy, Judy. What are you saying? I mean, I'm thinking, surely the bush is talking to somebody else. Or maybe I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear it. Or maybe I'm going to say, what do you want? Or maybe you're just quiet. I don't know what to say. But the response of Moses, I think, is really special. He says, here I am. And that similar phrase is going to be uttered later on, and we won't get to that because it's not in Exodus, but maybe 10 years later, if you've still put up with me, maybe we'll get to that one. But he says, here I am. And that's almost like, I'm ready. What do you want? Now, his tune may change just a little bit, but he's going to say, here I am. And the bush is going to respond, which is God speaking through the bush. He's going to say, what? Stop. Don't come any closer. And then he's going to say what? Take off your sandals, because the place where you are standing is holy. God is holy, and he's set apart, and he is like no other. And we get excited about different people that we'd like to meet. And what would you do? I'd go talk to them. You know, I would shake their hand. You know, I would love to meet them. And God is so amazing. And I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it. He's so awesome. He is so awesome that even the area around him is holy. And the people who are around him are called to be holy too. To be set apart. And that's what Jesus did for each one of us through baptism. It wasn't just a death. It was, I'm setting you apart. And I'm going to fill you with my Spirit. And I'm going to use you in a powerful way. And it is going to be the fire within you that I'm going to light this world. He says, take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy. Then he says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. And again, I love the fact that here he sees the bush. He has to be staring at it for a while because it's long enough that he realizes, wow, that should start burning up and dying down, but it's not. He goes over there. God speaks, or his name is called out. He doesn't know who it is. And he says, here I am. He says, take off your sandals. And then God identifies himself. Now, we don't know what's happened in the last 80 years. I mean, I've been waiting to use this. I've used this before, so I'll get it over with. Moses was born and he was a basket case. Come on, there we go. Because in the basket, God, come on. I mean, you shake, no. So we know about him. He's been put in the river. He's picked up by Pharaoh's daughter. He's raised in the palace. He kills somebody. He gets married because he stands up for some ladies who are trying to get water from a well. He has a son that he names Gershom. And this is all we have. So we don't know how Moses knows about God. Did he have some interaction with his family after he went to the palace? Most likely there's some interaction because his sister, anybody remember her name? Miriam is going to come on the scene. She's going to have just an amazingly beautiful song that she's going to sing a little bit later on. So there's probably some contact. We don't know. Maybe it's his father-in-law. Maybe Jethro was the one. In fact, when they get out in the desert, Jethro is going to be the one who's going to help his son-in-law and going to kind of consult him a little bit and help him out. Maybe it's priest Jethro. Maybe he walks him through this. I really like to think that Jethro, at some point in their relationship, learns about Moses and his past. I'd love to imagine that Jethro sits down with Moses, his son-in-law, the husband of his daughter, and they're tending sheep, and Moses tells the story. And Jethro talks about a God of second chances. A God who would look at his world and be pained with what they have done and how they've turned into. And instead of just destroying the world, he says, I'm going to save it. I'm going to pick out this guy named Noah, and he's going to be the one. For a God who looks at a son who's been favored among his other brothers, who ultimately gets thrown into a well, sold into slavery, and God pulls him out and says, I'm going to use you to save my people. I'm going to speak to you through dreams. You're going to be able to interpret dreams. And you're going to save the lives of literally hundreds of thousands. You could argue millions of people. And maybe Jethro looked at Moses, who was torn apart with guilt and fear for killing a man and then running away. And I just think over the course of those years, Moses just beat himself up over and over again, thinking, my family is back. And they're suffering, and here I am. And I just want to believe that father-in-law, priest Jethro, is saying, Moses, just believe that God has a purpose for you right now. There is no one in this room that God doesn't have a purpose for. And you can say, well, I'm not really good at speaking. Moses? Well, I've done some really bad things, like murder. Moses? Well, I'm getting a little bit older now and I shouldn't do it. 80-year-old Moses? I love Exodus chapter 3, because God shows up and he speaks to a really old, really beat down, murdering fugitive who's living in the desert and says, I want to rekindle the fire that once burned within you. And I want to use that to save my people. So either one of two things. Either things are really, really, really bad, like Egypt and slavery, God can use you. Or maybe there's no cracking of the whips and there's no children being drowned. Does that mean that God can't use you anymore?
He always can use you.
Remember, Remember, and I'm thinking especially of you, of those of you who have found yourself in a classroom or with little kids, or for Paula Montgomery and John when they took in those kids to help them, and you think, well, I don't know whatever happened to them. One person named Joseph, God used a bratty, arrogant kid. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of people as we open up Exodus that they are alive because one person stayed faithful to God. When he was in prison, when he was accused of adultery, when he's hated by his family, he just followed God. And instead of being angry and bitter, God used him. And how many of you have sat down with your own children or nephews or strangers or kids that you met in a classroom, or the kids who show up in the Bible classroom? Just think of the impact that you can have. The Israelites are a people of God because Joseph was faithful to God 500 years before. And so go out this week, and when you're checking somebody out at Albertsons, Tracy, I know that God is going to use you to shine his light to somebody who's having a really terrible day, and all they can think of is how terrible life is. And how each one of you is going to have an impact on people. Now, I know we went back to Genesis and we didn't get near as far into Exodus as we want, but I want you to believe that God has a burning bush, and we need to open our eyes. And even if it's not save 2 million people by dragging them across the desert, it might just be stop and listen and encourage one person today. And let God allow growth that you couldn't imagine and that you may not see in your lifetime. That's Exodus. God is coming down, and I'm so excited that we're going to meet Moses again next week, and we're going to find him. He's going to go into Egypt, and he's going to find his way back by this mountain again someday soon, and I hope you're excited about that. You are not cheating if you read ahead in Exodus. Go ahead, read as much as you want. Read it through every time. 40 chapters, it would be worth it. And then you can help me out as we try to discover some truths from this book. I want to close this out in prayer, and we'll be dismissed. God, thank you again for being a God who not only allows us to vent our frustrations and our struggles and our anxiety to you, but you're a God who listens. And you're a God who remembers your promises. And you're a God who is concerned for us. And you're a God who acts. And so we're going to believe as we leave here today that you're listening, that you're remembering, that you will keep your covenant, that you are concerned for us, and that you will act in a powerful way. And I pray that if you can use us in any way this week to reach out to this people who are struggling in a desert, who are hurting, Lord, let us do that. Let us answer your words to us by saying, here I am. May we be people who will help reach out this week. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. Thank you for being here. We'll see you on Wednesday, 6 o'clock.